Okay, now we're back from break. Mr. Wiesner, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we're here today to present to you the schedule of values for the 2012 revaluation. The schedule of values is basically our appraisal manual that we use to do our appraisal work. It's a 274-page document. We're going to spare you all the pages today, but we'll try to hit on a dozen or so of the most important pages. What I have on the screen right now is a part of the back page of a memo that I sent you in conjunction with this that talks about the time frame for adoption of the schedule of values. It's a 3-month process, and it has to be out there for the public to look at, and the public has an opportunity to review it and ask questions, and they have an opportunity to appeal it if they find something about it that they believe is incorrect. And that appeal can go through our local Board of Equalization and Review, and then it can move on to the State Property Tax Commission if need be. The process as we began today is just to get it in your hands so that you can start looking at it. After you have your meeting on the 15th, we will run an ad in the paper on the 17th to let the public know that you have the schedule of values and it is available for them to look at.
Will that also be on the website? Will we be able, Mrs. Hawkins, will we be able to make certain that not only the advertisement, but also on the website will be advertised, and our emails that we send out, we'll be able to do that as well? Thank you.
And we will also have the schedule of values on the website for people to look at. They can either come to our office and look at it and ask questions, or they can look at it online and then call us or come by and talk with us. So it'll be presented to you, it's presented to you this month. In September, we'll need to hold a public hearing for the public to make comments about it. And then in October, at your October meeting, we'll ask you to adopt the schedule of values. At that point, we'll have to run 4 advertisements saying that it has been adopted, letting the folks know that they can look at it, and they can appeal it if they take exception to it. If on November the 18th, no one has appealed the schedule of values, it'll become final, and we'll be using it to finalize our revaluation. If you can jump to page, first off, before you jump, let me pop something up here.
While you're looking for that, when you're talking about if the public wants to appeal the adoption of the schedule of values, where does that appeal go to? That appeal goes to the Board of Equalization Review. Okay. And if they're not satisfied with the Board of Equalization and Review's decision? Go to the Property Tax Commission. In Raleigh? In Raleigh, and then, of course, they can go to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court if necessary. Okay. Okay. Now, this page is not in your agenda, but I just wanted to show it. It's an overview of the schedule of values. There's basically 13 chapters. The ones I have highlighted in red on the screen are the most important chapters because they carry valuation information, and those are the ones we'll be touching on today. And that just gives you an overview of the different aspects of the manual itself. Chapters 4 and 4A are your land chapters. Chapter 8 is your income property chapter, and Chapter 11 is your, we call it county specifications, but it has all the base rates for all your buildings, all your outbuildings, and all the rules that we go by in appraising buildings. Chapter 12 is your appendix, has definitions that'll be useful to you. So if you can jump to page 268. Oops. Y'all are jumping faster than I am. Okay, first we want to talk about Chapter 4, which is the market value approach to appraising land. We have our rules that we follow, and the main purpose for these rules are to keep all of our appraisers consistent in the way they apply factors to land. And so we have, as you can see, 8 land models that we deal with. The first one being land model 0, which is just the way we adjust properties that are called lots or just vacant acreage. Then we have models 1, 2, and 3, which adjust properties that we price by the front foot. And the one I want to talk about today, to give you a good overview of how the factors work on property, is land model 4, and that's found on page 268. Excuse me, 286.
We have 4 models that actually talk about the appraisal of acreage. And of course, vacant acreage is one of the more difficult things for us to appraise and be consistent on. So we have these 4 models. We have a model 4, which we're going to look at right now, is for rural acreage. We have land model 8, which is for suburban acreage. And then we have a model for commercial acreage and a model for industrial acreage. And they all work in very similarly, but the factors, of course, and the adjustments are different. So when we appraise rural land, we break the county up into neighborhoods and we come up with a base price. So you may have somewhere out in the county, you may have an area that's priced at, let's say, $10,000 an acre. And so every tract in there that is of that zoning type and within that neighborhood would be priced at $10,000 an acre. And then when you have a series of adjustments that we apply to that acreage value to come up with the actual value for that particular tract. And this chapter will give you some idea about how those factors work. We have a location factor. So we can, oops, that moves fast. Let me use my page up and down. We have a location factor, and so you could have a plus or minus factor based on the location, external factors that affect the location or the value of the property. One of the big factors we have is the size factor. And of course, as you know, as properties get smaller in size, they typically sell for more per acre. As they get larger, they sell for less per acre. The base acreage price, the 100% adjustment for acreage that we use is 25 acres on rural land. So we say a 25 acres tract with average frontage, average access, average utilities is, in this case, $10,000 an acre for this particular neighborhood we're talking about. The size factor chart, here are examples on the screen of the size factor charts. So if you're at $10,000 an acre in this particular area, 1 acre would be valued at 240% of that, so $24,000 an acre for a 1 acre tract, or a 100 acre tract would be at 94.8% of that, or $9,480 an acre. So you can kind of see how that works. And
you know, where do you come up with the 82? I'm looking at 100.001-300. Where do you come up with 93% and 82%? Excuse me, I know where you come up with the 82%. Where do you come up? Why do you come up with 93% at 75 times the base?
Okay, this is a formula. The top part of this page is a formula that causes the adjustments to fall into line as they're listed at the bottom of the page. And those are subjective factors that we come up with through analyzing sales through the marketplace to try to come up with what kind of factor would be needed for certain size tracts. And so the way this formula works is the first quarter of an acre is at 370%. Mm-hmm. The second half an acre is at 195%. If you're following me.
I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out, is under your scenario of 100.001 acres to 300 acres, you have the first 25 acres at 100%, and you have the balance 75 acres at 93%. Why do you come up with 93%?
Show me which one you're looking at. You're looking at the 100 acre tract?
Yes, if you, right here, you've got 25 acres times your base times 100%, which is, I would assume, your 100% right here at 25 acres.
Okay. Okay, what you're doing,
is that 93%?
Okay, if you look at the formula above there, the 25 acres to 100 acres is at 93%.
No, 25 acres is at 100%.
25 acres is 100%.
Right.
And then 25 to 100 acres is at 93%. And so the next 75 acres is at 93%. And then the next 100 acres is at 82%. It's an accumulative formula. And of course, the formula in blue is just there to make it easy to calculate.
So the question becomes, where does the 370% come from, the 195% come from, the 93% come from? And you're saying that's just a subjective amount?
That is, well, I guess I wouldn't want to call it totally subjective. It's the appraiser's making a decision on what impact that next grouping of acreage has on the total value of the property.
Okay.
And the formula itself is kind of complicated, so we put examples down below of kind of how the percentages fall into place. And you can see there's a fairly smooth flow from the highest percentage down to the lowest percentage at 1,000 acres. And again, we try to extract that from the market to see the difference in impact of per acre price on a 500-acre tract versus a 10-acre tract, and have a comparison there. Then we get into other factors that we use. We have road frontage factors that we apply on different sides of tracts. And again, these are things that over the years we accumulate sales, and we do comparisons, and we try to come up with how much impact frontage has on different types of tracts. And we apply that in a factor chart. We have access factors that we apply, so you can, depending on the type of access you have, rural paved is base, so it's no adjustment. Rural dirt is a -5%. A rural trail is -10%. No access is -30. Private drive is -15. Paved with water is a +30, so you can see that we're making adjustments depending on not only the frontage, but the type of access, but the type of utilities. And the blue line is kind of what is typical for the area, or what is our average parcel that we're considering for the area. Then we go on, we have topography adjustments. So depending on the lay of the land, we look at, in this area that we're talking about where we're using $10,000 an acre, we're looking at what is the typical lay of the land in that particular area. And if a particular property is worse or better, then we can make adjustments to affect the value of that property. We can also consider things such as the percolation of the land, whether it's buildable or not. And we have pages in here that talk about that and talk about how we make those adjustments. So we continue on through with those, and I'm bringing these to your attention so that you can look at them in your own time and come back with questions if you have questions. So everything we're looking at so far is for rural acreage. We have floodplain factors. Of course, we have land, lots of land in the county that has floodplain on it. So we have a section here on how we adjust for floodplain. We could do shape factors. So if you've got odd shape to your property that makes it difficult to sell, we can make an adjustment for that. And again, we have right-of-way factors. If you have a right-of-way running across your property, whether it's a power line right-of-way or a road right-of-way, we make adjustments for that. So I'm just trying to give you a rough idea of how we go about adjusting for acreage, and we do the same type of adjustments, whether it be rural acreage or suburban acreage or urban acreage or commercial or industrial acreage.
And that categories that you just went through would apply for each property. In other words, if you have residential, urban frontage, that all gets defined in here.
Right. If
you've got commercial, urban frontage, as opposed to commercial, rural front, that all is what's encompassed in some form or fashion in these schedule of values.
That's right. And so,
or addressed, I should say.
And so what you have, each property card will have a base price for the acreage, and it'll have adjustments come out of these manuals for size. It'll have adjustments for all these other factors: location, topo, access, shape. All these different factors will show up on the property record card. So each property will have its own individual value when we've completed the appraisal. Now, I'm not going to go a lot more through land unless you want to. That's a good overview, I think, of kind of the approach we take to appraising land.
Any other questions for Mr. Wiesner in regards to land?
Now, a thing of interest we'll go to next is the present use or the farm use valuation, and that's on page 323. Now, some of you know, or maybe you don't, that the state basically comes up with a recommended value for farm use land or present use land. And that's arrived at through the North Carolina Use Value Advisory Board, and they publish a document each year and they send it to us. And of course, in the year of revaluation, we use that document to arrive at the values we're going to suggest to you on the different types of agricultural, horticultural, and forest land. And the chapter has definitions involved, and if you go to the second page, which is page 324, you'll see the recommendation. The way the Use Value Advisory Board comes up with a value is they do a canvass of all the farms within the county, within the region, to determine what the market rents are for different types of land. So in this case, you can see that in the Piedmont area, the best agricultural land rents for $56.20, so that's what they came up with. Average at $38.30 and fair at $24.90. And then they use a capitalization rate of 6.5% to capitalize out a value. So they come to a value of, on Class 1 agricultural land at $865 an acre, Class 2 at $590, and Class 3 at $385. Now, in Cabarrus County, we have very little Class 1 land. Probably 2% of our land would be Class 1 land.
2% of our farmland or 2% of all of our land?
Well, I'm talking farmland, but probably
Okay.
all of our land. Class 2 agriculture is the most predominant that we have, so the most predominant value we'll have on agricultural cropland will be $590 an acre. Class 3 is more or less a land that's not really suitable for row cropping, but it's more for pasture land, and it'll be valued at $385 an acre. Now, I will warn you that these values are higher than the last revaluation, fairly substantially higher. The open land's about 22% higher than it was in the last revaluation.
Why is that?
Because the average rents have increased. Now, granted, they're still not very high, so on an agricultural piece of acreage, you're at $590 an acre, so you're at a very small amount of taxes on 1 acre of land. But it's still, it is an increase. Horticulture.
Those are set, you said those are set out of Raleigh?
They are suggested to us. Now, they are set by this board. Once we present it to
that's
you,
what I was wondering.
you can do what you want to with it, but that's the recommendation of the Use Value Advisory Board. Horticultural land would be valued at, based on the recommendation, at Class 1 at $12.50. Now, about 12% of our horticultural land is in Class 1. And then Class 2 is $8.10 and Class 3 is $5.60. That's about a 10% increase over the last revaluation. Forest land, it has the highest increase, Class 1, $485, Class 2 at $305. Probably 90% of our woodland is Class 2 land. And that's about a 40% increase over the last revaluation. Again, because the rents that they came up with were higher than the last revaluation, and that's what caused this increase.
I guess they weren't in a recession.
Guess not. Then we have a breakdown of all the land in Cabarrus County by soil type and which class it falls into. And so there's our recommended schedule of values for agriculture, forest, and horticultural land. We have, in past revaluations, we have not had the tools to actually break this land down into the actual soil types and value them by soil type, but we're going through that process this time. We've got some good programs written for our GIS system where we can actually go in and capture each soil type on each farm, determine how much of each we have, and go back to this chart and actually do a very accurate valuation of those. Not that the valuations in the past weren't accurate. There's not going to be a great deal of percentage difference, but the law requires that we break them down this way, so we're going to try to get it done.
How do we do that how do you do that off of GIS?
We use the soil survey maps. We overlay the soil survey maps over the parcel layers. And
when you talk, you're losing me now.
The soil survey maps done by the Department of Agriculture,
So they go out to each one of these farms and figure out what they have on their property?
Yes, they do. Well, they do a countywide soil survey, and they take soil samples all over the county and lay out, looks kind of like a topographical map.
Right.
With land types.
Wow.
And so we have to go in and measure, take each farm and measure all the different land types that are on each farm to come up with these breakdowns.
And then for each of the soil, you also have classifications according to the different breakouts of agricultural, forest, or horticulture.
If we know the soil type and we know whether it's agricultural or forestry, then the soil type tells us what class it goes into.
So you get the soil type, you get the configuration of the acreage, you get the classification, and then that's some of that goes into the value.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Some of them have about 10 different classifications.
Wow.
It's time consuming at best, but with GIS, it's a lot easier because you can get the computer to actually.
Well, just looking at the soil that we have in the county is, we probably have 30 different soil types that look, I mean, I haven't counted them, but.
Yep,
Yeah.
a bunch of them.
Well, I noticed that some of them, there was like, they have like, according to what slope it is too, so it's not really the different soil type, it's just the soil on a different slope.
Mm-hmm.
The-
I didn't know there was that many different types of clay.
Yes, they are.
You're used
I
to
thought it was
red-
just bull tallow.
Usually the Cabarrus County.
You're used to red and white, you know?
Yeah, we'd be happy if there was only one, but.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to bring to your attention that the recommended values for farm use are going to go up based on the recommendations of the board. On farm use, now that for the home site on farm use, it's actually priced at market value. So these charts on this page basically give factors that we apply to that 1 acre that we associate with the house to bring it back into line with the market value of similar properties in the area.
Question on that, because it kind of prompted me to think when you said house, Brent, was I know we've got some farmers that they're commercial, either layer houses or, egg houses. Are they classified, I think by state law, they're classified as a commercial building and they're not included in the present use value, is that correct?
I believe the land under them qualifies as agricultural use land.
Okay.
But the building itself,
Building itself.
just like all structures are valued at market value.
Okay. That's
Just
regardless
the
of whether they're-
land.
Okay,
that gets
okay,
a
this is just
reduction.
the land, okay, got it. So,
Any questions on present use? Again, this is a 3-month period, so we'll have a lot of time to answer questions as they pop in your mind. Let's go to page 406. Now, some of you may be familiar with this, but this is chapter 11, and it's the chapter that we use to value our buildings. And what we're looking at here is the building model 1. We have 7 different building models that we use. We have, the first one is residential, used on residential structures. Number 2 is used on manufactured homes. Number 3 is used on condominiums. Number 4 is used on offices. 5 is used on multifamily, 6 on industrial, and 7 on commercial. They're all laid out pretty much the same way, and they're all in this chapter right after this page. And basically what this is showing you is the way our system works is that we have a base rate. And the base rate we're recommending today for a single-family structure is $70, and that's $70 a square foot for the heated area of that structure. Now, the base rate is then affected by the points. We have a point system, so the points are on this page. So the points you see in blue, the structural elements you see in blue, are what we would call average for a very average single-family structure. And if you add all the blue points up, you'll come to 100%, or 100 points. So if you had a very average house, it comes to 100 points, it's going to be valued at $70 a square foot for the base area of the house. Now, as you check off different, as a house has different structural elements, then the points are going to kick in, and your points could be less than 100%, or they could be more than 100%. They could be as low as 55, 60 points, or they could be as high as 250 points. So again, every house is going to have its own individual base rate depending on the structural elements and the quality of the construction. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see quality adjustment. And those are four overriding factors that multiply times the points to come up with the quality index that we use on a particular house. So a house can be minimum at 75%, or it can be excellent at 150%. Page 2 goes on to talk about points that we assign for bedroom, bathroom counts, and then it has a size factor chart. And so a 100-point house, we're using a 1,500 square foot house. If it gets smaller, it gets a higher adjustment. If it gets larger, it gets a lower adjustment. Questions on that?
You said the larger the house, you get a lower point value?
Yes, you get a size adjustment.
Or size?
Often the larger houses have higher quality, so the base rate's still going to be higher, but they're going to be adjusted. If we go to page 423, we'll take a quick look at the base rates that we're proposing, and we have 99 different improvement types. Actually, we have more than that now. We probably have 120 different improvement types that have a base rate associated with them. And we've tried to define all the different buildings that are present in the county. And you can see the first one is a single-family residential home at $70 a square foot. And a lot of you in your mind might think that seems low to build a house. And again, that's just for the heated area of the house. Your porches, your decks, your garages, your basements, and all those things are going to be added into this number so that the ultimate appraisal will have all those things added into it. So you're welcome to look through this in your own time. It covers all your residential type properties. It covers your commercial properties, industrial properties, public properties, offices, every kind of property you can imagine that we have in the county.
Any questions for Mr. Wiesner? Anything else?
A couple more pages.
Okay.
We'll take you to. And I just mentioned that your basements and your porches, this chart for your review when you get a chance identifies all those auxiliary areas that could be built onto a house. And the columns out to the right show you the percentage of market or the percentage of the base price. So in other words, if you look at the top line for ease, that's an apartment. So if you had a single family home that had an apartment attached or built in with it, it would be valued at 90% of the base price of the house itself. Okay. And then you've got all of your outbuildings and extra features, and I'm not going to take you to that page, but further down in this chapter you'll find all of your paving, your fencing, your walls, and all the different things you can build in your yard. We'll have a value schedule for each of those that we apply, and you're free to look at those as you wish. I'd like for Chris to talk a little bit, if we'll go to page 388. A big important thing for us in this revaluation will be the income approach to value, because we have so few sales in this market on commercial industrial properties. So we're going to be looking closely at the rental rates and the cap rates and trying to come up with an income value. So I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about this page, and the subsequent page shows the cap rates that Chris is proposing to use. And I'd like for him to talk a little bit about how he derived at those.
Okay, with the income approach, what I've had to do is, because of the limited sales we've had, I've gone out to a national survey and sent out approximately 3,000 letters on the income, cost data, and vacancy rates, et cetera, expenses. So what I try to do is break this down to a capitalization rate. I think Can you not hear me? How's that? Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. I believe, Mr. White, you asked me about cap rates last time we were in here. So what I try to do is break it down to different uses of the property, from apartments, from typical to luxury type, and I went from the years up there will be the effective age on the properties, and the cap rates will range from various locations. Of course, expenses will also range from different areas in the county and the age of the building. So I broke it down to different uses of apartments, commercial type properties, offices, motels, home for the elderly, shopping centers, as far as the malls and then strip malls. And then I broke it down to your industrial type properties, including warehouses and self-storage type facilities. Out of the 3,000 some letters I've sent out, we've received about 14% back, which is a little over 400 letters, which is pretty good. I think people were more up to divulging their information this go around because of the economy, which is helpful. So I placed 2 examples at the bottom of the page just supporting the national trends I found. And I'm still going through the 400 some letters and backing those up with our sales data and trying to come up with some more supporting parcels within our county. So it should help support those capitalization rates.
What is NOI?
Net operating
Yes.
income.
So that's after expenses and vacancy rates. That's your leftover income.
Okay.
And to get the capitalization rate, you would either you would divide the sales price into the net operating income to come up with the capitalization rate. The top one up there was an appraisal sent in to me, which is considered a value on a piece of property. I had the NOI with that, which supported a 0.074% cap. And this was a light manufacturing facility. And if you look up above there in the industrial parts section under industrial, it's running from 7.5% to 9% on those type of facilities. With mass appraisals, we take the taxes are not put into the expenses. They're actually put into a cap rate. So it's about 0.5% to 1% of total expenses is placed back into a capitalization rate. So if you add that to the first example down there, it actually comes up to almost 8.5% on your cap. The one below that is an actual sale that I received the NOI on, and it came out to a 0.068% cap. If I add the 1% taxes back into that capitalization rate, it comes out to 0.078%. So it is fitting in the ranges I've shown you here. I'm hoping to better define and give you more examples by the 15th, though. So I'm still having a few letters trickle in here and there. So.
But not only has Chris looked at national trends and regional trends, he's also contacted multiple appraisers in the area, gotten the information that they have and what they're using in this particular area to try to support these rates that we're going to be using. So as we get these finalized, we'll do a mass income approach to all the income producing property in the county, and compare that to what the system's coming up with and making whatever adjustments need to be made. So chapter 12, I'm not going to take you to. Chapter 12 is definitions. So if you're curious about what some of the other things mean, you can go to chapter 12 and read about it. But again, what we're presenting to you today is a draft. We're going to make a few more changes to it before the 15th. We'll get the final version to Kay prior to your meeting, and then that'll be the version that'll be advertised and available to the public.
Mrs. Honeycutt, when we have that on the 15th, if we could have an individual thumb drive, that way we can have that thumb drive to review and look at. in regards to, Mecklenburg just did their reviews, why don't we just use their evaluations and just bring it here to Cabarrus County? Why can't we do that?
Because we do a better job.
I believe that. I mean, is there any value in, well, I wouldn't say any, is there value in to look at what sort of cap rates they had to see, is that consistent? Or can we be consistent with a county right next door? Or is it their development is completely different, or their land is that much different, and it's not a accurate representation?
Well, we would want to compare them to make sure that we weren't too far askew from what they used. They are a year ahead of us, and that'll have some impact on it. I don't know if you've contacted them yet to get that information.
I've not contacted them directly, but I have talked to, being a licensed appraiser before I came here, I know a lot of appraisers over there, which did a lot of research for Mecklenburg County, and the information they sent me, I know two of them indicated that a lot of the cap rates that they sent me, Mecklenburg is using, so I know it's fitting into their schedule.
Any other questions? There's no action that we need to take today. I think we do need to place this on the new business to receive the schedule of values on the 15th.
And then just establish a public hearing for.
And that will be on the 15th. We'll establish the public hearing, and we can do that today to have the public hearing in September. I'm not certain what day that would be. 19th. Do we have a motion to place this on new business and to call for a public hearing on September the 19th?
So moved.
We have a second. We have a second. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next matter we have is on page 163 is the Rural Operating Assistance Program. I call on Mr. Bushy at this time.
Good evening. We're here for our 2011 and 12 rope grant to hold a public hearing at the next commissioners meeting. The rope grant from the state of North Carolina covers transportation for 3 programs: the EdTAP program, which is elderly and disabled transportation, employment transportation, and the rural general public transportation. And those 3 programs are wrapped into this one grant, and this year we are receiving from the state $196,607.
Any questions for Mr. Bushy? Since this is a public hearing, do we have a motion to place this under new business?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Unless somebody has an issue with that, is there a reason why we can't place this towards the beginning of the calendar on the 15th, so when Mr. Bushy or Mr. Bass come, they don't have to stay until later in the meeting?
Yep, public hearings are generally at the beginning
Good.
under new business.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bushy. Next matter we have is on page 169. Is the resolution authorizing sale of foreclosed property.
Mr. Chairman, we removed that one with the changes to the
Okay,
agenda.
so that's removed?
Mhm.
I take that it completes all of our agenda for today. Is that correct, except for the closed session?
We do need to add the economic development to our closed session item.
Okay. Do we have a motion to place the 2 economic development grant projects to our closed business session? And, or number 1, do we have a motion to do that? We have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Second is, do we have a motion to go into closed session to discuss the relocation or of businesses to this area and invite Mr. McDaniels and Mr. Cox into the meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And pending litigation.
And
We have
pending
one
litigation.
matter to discuss briefly.
Okay, I'm sorry, pending litigation as well. Is that still your motion, Commissioner Meismer? Commissioner Cruth? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? After that meeting, we should, depending on what goes on in that meeting, we'll adjourn after that. Does that conclude all the business that we have but for the closed session meeting, Mrs. Honeycutt?
We do have a couple reports at the regular meeting.
Okay. If we can look at that. We do have a quarterly report from the Economic Development Corporation that will be providing that to us. Is this the update that we're going to have for the meeting, or is there you think there's going to be any changes to that, Mr. Cox?
I don't think so.
Okay. Good.
With the,
There may be a change?
not that one, I think we're kind of, we've got, this would be the fourth quarter end of year report, but I
Right.
think we're scheduled to have one, are we scheduled to have one in September as well?
Should not. It should be in October.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Anything else will come before this board tonight? Okay, we'll go into closed session. And happy birthday. Okay, we'll go into closed session. Thank you.